The last time I was on this stage, there was no Spotify, no Instagram, no internet. As a high school sophomore, I was not an aspiring actor, but a school play needed French can-can dancers doing a kick line. So my dance group, Choreo, was invited to join the cast. At the time, I never imagined I'd return to this stage on a completely different mission. Instead, I was consumed by questions you may have about your own lives as teens or former teens. Where will I go to college? Will I enjoy it? What kind of work will I do? How about a family? And if the term bucket list had existed then, I would have wondered about that too. Imagine being in high school before smartphones and social media existed. It's impossible, right? But because I didn't grow up with social media, learning how to use it was trying to get through a locked door without a key. My job in the corporate world was VP of Communications, and one of my projects was bringing a form of social media to the workplace where everyone creates a profile, forms teams, and does work in a social space. This was my first real introduction to social media. Sure, I joined Facebook kicking and screaming because a friend made me do it. But this new project scared me. People on the tech team were throwing around terms like hybrid cloud and on-prem. I had no idea what they meant, and I was the project leader. At the time, Mindy Kaling, the entertainer, was on the cover of Fast Company magazine. I felt like it was silently mocking me for everything I was not. I didn't know what I was doing. I wanted to crawl under my desk and hide until the project went away. But that didn't happen. Like anything you don't want to do, but then you know you have to do, I had to kick my fear to the ground and move forward through that hybrid cloud. Launch day was looming. One morning I woke up and decided I'm going to start a blog. If I needed to teach others how to do it, including our CEO, I had to do it for myself first. So I wrote about what I knew, the workplace, in posts like writing irresistible emails and failure is the secret to success. And I loved it, conversing with people through comments and connecting people across time zones. And when I didn't know what to do, like hyperlinking to an article, I just asked my readers and they responded. So by experimenting and being willing to make mistakes in a public way, I learned valuable new skills. Later, I started a blog outside the company writing about how people build their careers by using social media to tell their stories. In part, I was intrigued by colleagues I'd never met in real life, but I felt like I knew them because of our interactions in social media. One of these people was Sandra, who worked in another state, and during our project, she shared content, she posted comments, she encouraged others to use the platform. And even though I'd never met her in person, I could see her leadership in social media. A few months later, Sandra's name came up during a talent review. So this is where leaders come together and evaluate everybody's performance. And when we talked about Sandra, I had good things to say about her, all because of her social presence. A study by Dell and the Institute for the Future predicts that 85% of the jobs that today's young people will do in 2030 have not yet been invented. If this is even partly true, that means in just over a decade, many of the jobs people do today will be replaced by new and different ones. That's a lot of learning. One of my favorites, Thomas Friedman, says that today's American dream is more like a journey than a fixed destination. And he describes the feeling as walking up a down escalator. The only way to master it is to become a lifelong learner. But how do you do that? Well, I believe the answer lies in two questions. First, who has a smartphone in their pocket? And who used it on social media today? All right, so think about the impressions that you saw, what you shared, how that made you feel. Because social media gets a bad rap, right? It saps our attention, it makes us depressed, it polarizes our world, and don't even get me started on the YouTube comments section. The Pew Research Center says that teens especially can feel overwhelmed by the drama on social media. You can feel pressured to post content that gets a lot of likes and comments. I didn't know I was supposed to delete Instagram posts that didn't get at least 50 likes in the first hour until my daughter told me. My early posts got about 4 likes each. Good thing I didn't know that rule. But there's an upside to social media that doesn't get this kind of attention. social media helps us learn in new and fun and different ways, because learning isn't over until you're over. It's forever a work in progress, no matter how many academic degrees you do or don't earn. Anything any of us could ever want to know is in the apps on our phones for Instagram and Snapchat and YouTube. And there's Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. That's the network for professionals, sometimes known as the spinach of social media. More on that in a minute. But by applying some strategy to the content you consume, you can get a degree in life every day. The impressions in social media, the stories, the tweets, the snaps, can be a powerful learning system. Social media can help you become a lifelong learner in 3 different ways. First, you can learn about any topic you choose. Maybe you want to learn more about technology. What's the latest in artificial intelligence or augmented reality or robotics? And how are those being applied in business or the arts or social good? Maybe you want to know which media outlets you should trust to report the facts, or about data science and how that helps companies decide what products to offer and which people to hire. To start, you can find the leading experts on Twitter, or LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. You can follow their feeds and view their posts. And you can connect with almost anyone on social media. By commenting on someone's content or asking a question, you can often start a conversation. I like to do this sometimes with authors and podcasters, and you might try this with your professors when you get to college, or the leaders at a company where you work, especially if they're hard to meet in person. You never know if they might reply. Sometimes people who seem very accomplished are often very accessible in social media. Second, you can learn about the social media platforms themselves. You can learn about the algorithms that decide who sees what posts. You can study the psychology of online behavior. You can get to know how advertising works and how it influences you. And then you can use that to your advantage. So for example, as my son told me, if you want to make an annoying ad go away, say for lava lamps, you just do searches on "I hate lava lamps" a few times, no more ads. Why else is this important? Well, because social media is a topic you can perpetually study but never master. 2 writers, Guy Kawasaki and Peg Fitzgerald, say that the term social media guru is an oxymoron because nobody really knows how social media works. No matter how smart you are, they say, best practices always change because the platforms change how the sites work. Everybody needs to keep experimenting. I took that advice to heart. One of my experiments was posting to LinkedIn every day for a month just to see what would happen. In part, I wanted to test a data point I read that says it takes 20 LinkedIn posts in a month to reach 60% of your audience. So I put my data into a spreadsheet, I analyzed it for patterns, I wrote about it, and people wanted to know more. They started asking questions and inviting me to speak. And lastly, social media helps others learn about you. So a top skill for the future is making yourself known. It's sharing who you are and what you do in a world where you're often changing jobs. In every post in social media, you're telling your story, like Peninsula High School Service Learning does here with a lot of joy. You're building your reputation, also known as your personal brand. You're sharing what you're doing to make the world a better place. What's not advised is the humble brag, that boast sort of wrapped up in fake humility that makes people want to do a face palm when they see it. So no one really wants to know just how hard it is to decide among multiple Ivy League college acceptances. But what is required is being on LinkedIn. That's the professional network. This is where you share what you do and what you want to do in the world of work. It's your always-on, 24/7 resume. It's how you tell your professional story. And a college admissions officer might look at your profile, especially if you put a link in your application. It's also a way people can find you. So a job recruiter might contact you because your dream job wants to slide into your DMs. People will come to know and trust you. Posting positive impressions in social media helps you manage transitions and successions in your life with greater ease. I'm convinced if social media had existed throughout my life, I could have made transitions much, much easier. I could have learned faster, and I could have shared more about me. So when I got to college, I quickly realized I was in the wrong place. So I transferred to a new school. I studied economics because it seemed practical. I worked in early jobs I didn't like very much. Then I went back to school for a master's and found work I loved. I married a great guy and started a family, and I've worked in a dozen different jobs so far, from fast food cashier to corporate vice president to business owner today. Were there ups and downs along the way? Yes. Doubts about how it would all happen? Absolutely. But remember that scary social media project I told you about? That turned out to be one of the foundations of my business. So what made it happen? Learning, growing, experimenting every day. This is why we all need to be social seekers of new knowledge, perspectives, and experiences. Social media opens the door. Thank you.